Well, good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Wednesday, May 20th. It is time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. We have so many of your stories that we are going to tell tonight on Q News Tonight. We begin with breaking Q News. It is war between the CDC and the White House. We've been muzzled. Sources at the CDC say the White House has put politics ahead of people. We've prepared a story package on this. Watch this.
Multiple sources inside the Centers for Disease Control tell CNN they are convinced politics, not science, is the driving force behind the White House response to COVID-19, and those decisions have made the effects of the pandemic in the United States worse.
Now, there hasn't been as much input from the CDC, from my point of view.
CNN spoke to 6 current CDC staff members, and many of them say the White House has stifled the CDC in its coronavirus response, and at times limited its ability to provide health information to the public. One source telling CNN, "We are working under a black cloud of an administration that doesn't have our backs." Another saying, "We've been muzzled." Dr. James Curran is Dean of Public Health at Emory University and former Assistant Surgeon General at the CDC.
Has the CDC been sidelined here?
I think the perception is that the CDC has been sidelined, at least part of the time. Once you feel like the work you're doing is going through a political lens, it gets to be very, very discouraging.
In the early weeks of January, staff members at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had tracked a growing number of transmissions of coronavirus in Europe and elsewhere and proposed a global advisory that would alert flyers to the dangers of air travel.
But about a week passed before the alert was issued publicly, and crucial time was lost when about 66,000 European travelers were streaming into American airports every day. The delay, detailed in documents, is the latest example of the war to emerge of a growing sense of disconnect between the CDC and the White House.
In interviews with CNN, CDC officials say their agency's efforts to mount a coordinated response to the COVID-19 pandemic have been hamstrung by a White House whose decisions are driven by politics rather than science. 6 mid and high-ranking staff members spoke with CNN on the condition that their anonymity for fear of retaliation.
According to the CDC official, high-level official, quote, "We were muzzled. What's tough is that if we would have acted earlier on what we knew and recommended, we could have saved lives and money." Here are the key issues, according to the CDC officials, of what they've said.
First, in February, when Trump was downplaying the threat, CDC's Nancy Messonnier said COVID would create disruption to everyday life that might be severe.
Second, Trump's White House delayed in March an emergency warning by a full week, and the lost time caused loss of life.
Third, CDC complained to Trump that while travel from China was stopped, most of the infection was coming from Europe, and that delay took 7 days to respond from the White House until the president was ready to make it a press announcement.
Fourth, CDC officials say the worst consequence of the frayed relationship is a general sense that the CDC has lost its place as the face and voice of public health in the midst of a 100-year pandemic.
Fifth, the final straw at CDC was that the Trump administration shelved CDC-drafted guidelines to reopen the United States. The CDC's guidelines were much more strict and detailed than the White House's own roadmap toward a return to normal. When asked why this was happening, a CDC employee said an overarching concern is that the agency's scientific work is taking a backseat to politics.
This reminds me a lot of the separation of church and state, which are there to help protect people from these exact kinds of crises. Right now, science is at war with our own leadership, as we described right here. And it's very disconcerting to think that we're not going to be listening to facts anymore and just listening to what some hypocrite tells us as loudly as he can.
It reminds me of the first time I got an STD. I can ignore it and pretend it's not there, but it doesn't stop burning and it doesn't just go away.
Oh my. We are watching history unfold right before our very eyes. The question is, are we going to recognize it over the next 5.5 months before the November 3rd election, or are we going to wait for historians that are going to re-explain it to us 5 to 10 years from now? That's the only question at play here. Good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 20th, 2020. It is time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we are going to tell tonight on Q News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Thank you for joining Q News Tonight. We are live. This is a live show, so anything can happen. Tonight we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBTQ community. Be sure to stay tuned as we bring you amazing good news stories even despite the coronavirus pandemic. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is my co-guest anchor, Misty Eyes.
Hi, we are super excited. Tonight we are celebrating an LGBTQ icon who turned 74.
And anchor and friend, Napoleon Plays.
Hey everyone, what can a baby do? Stay tuned to find out more.
Let's cue up the news.
We are proud to share with you that our LGBTQ television network supports the unique live broadcast of Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday Church Service, the world's most popular LGBTQ queer religious broadcast. And we are proud of our diverse 501c3 and charitable support.
We are proud to have breaking news tonight, as reported today by Alexa Analytics, about Q News Tonight and It's Happening Out. The Happening Out television network has become the largest LGBTQ live media platform on the planet.
We are happy to report, as of today, we have the #1 live video LGBTQ website in the world at 9,462 out of 900 million.
Combined with a 2.2 million television viewers in April, we are the source for the LGBT community for news, talk shows, and entertainment. Thank you for your confidence and thank you for your support.
And at 8 o'clock tonight, It's Happening Out. It's going to be a fun entertainment talk show. So let's queer up the news. First, let's catch up on all of the news surrounding COVID-19 with our quarantine quickies. The first story tonight is our daily reporting of the coronavirus facts, especially important to the LGBT community. Quarantine quickies. Coronavirus facts for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. We report on coronavirus case numbers today. Based on the standard acceptance of 7% of population of the LGBT community, America's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand at 110,000. The world's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand at 351,000 worldwide. Total U.S. cases stand at over 1.5 million, and the total world cases now cross 5 million cases. We remind you that America's ground zero for the pandemic, and the USA is only 4.4% of the world's population, and today we account for 31.3% of the world's cases. That percentage is slightly lower today. We report on coronavirus deaths. America's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand at 6,551. The world's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand worldwide at 22,788, while total USA deaths stand at over 93,000 and total world deaths at over 325,000. America is nearly a third of all COVID-19 deaths on the planet, and remember, the USA is just 4.4% of the world's population. We account now for 28.7% of all of the world's deaths. Today, that percentage is slightly higher. President Trump and Vice President Pence have said a lot of ridiculous things about testing directly to the LGBT community. So let's do the testing facts. As of today, we have tested 12,647,000 tests taken, and contact source tracing is even dramatically lower. But this continues to be a dismal statistic. We give the government's grade of D- because there are 328 million Americans, which means we've only tested 3.8% of the population as of today. The medical community recommends a testing rate should be 10% for reopening. So despite what Trump and Pence tell the LGBTQ community, testing and contact source tracing is the #1 solution to the pandemic. Q News Tonight recognizes our Hall of Fame top states in testing tonight. Number 3 is North Dakota, number 2 is New York, and we congratulate Rhode Island as being the first state in America to cross 11% in their population testing. Q News Tonight also recognizes our Hall of Shame states. Doing the worst job in testing, LGBTQ America, we hope you don't live in one of these states. Number 5 is Oregon, which has tested only 2.4%. Number 4 is Kansas. Number 3, Colorado. Number 2, Idaho. And number 1, I've grown weary of saying number 1 at 0.38%.
Quarantine quickies. New outbreaks of COVID in China are leading to Wuhan-style lockdowns. We've got a video prepared for you. Watch this.
China's northeast Jilin city has imposed a lockdown after the province reported 6 local transmissions on Tuesday and 1 suspected case. The city has a population of over 4 million people. Its neighbour, Shulan, recorded a new cluster of infections over the weekend. As part of the lockdown, Jilin city has suspended all passenger transport and closed off communities. This morning, the city's railway station temporarily suspended departures and ride-through services until further notice. People must show a negative test result to leave the area.
Chinese authorities have sealed off the northeastern city of Shulan, home to about 700,000 people, after an outbreak of coronavirus, imposing measures similar to those used in Wuhan.
All villages and residential compounds in the city were closed off, and only one person from each household allowed out for 2 hours every second day for essentials. In Shulan, residential compounds were restricted to just one entry and exit for emergency vehicles, and banned non-residents and vehicles from entering.
If there are confirmed cases in a community resident, no one can enter or leave. Last week, the city was reclassified as high risk after a cluster of cases emerged connected to a woman with no known history of travel or exposure to the virus.
In response, authorities ordered the temporary closure of public places, schools, and public transport. On Monday, while only 34 people have been diagnosed with COVID in Jilin, the province, in the past fortnight, Chinese medical experts instituted the lockdown based on what they said they learned from Wuhan.
The World Health Organization has been in China for months, assisting and monitoring the COVID-19 response. We remind you on Q News Tonight, reporting that the United States has 17 times more coronavirus cases and 19 times more deaths than China. And China's population is 5 times more than the United States.
Well, it's interesting to me that China, saying what they learned in Wuhan, would have 34 cases and completely lock down a city of 700,000. While the authoritarian nature of what goes on in China is probably repugnant to virtually all Americans, you can't deny the facts. In comparison to the United States of deaths and cases, and China being 5 times our population size, they have a fraction of the problem that we have in the United States.
That's exactly what I've been thinking about. I don't see people in other countries protesting to force themselves open, especially not with militia, weapon, guns, or armory of different degrees in government buildings. It's curious to see that here and nowhere else.
Yes, there are higher deaths We are way higher in deaths, and they are much higher in population. They are literally living on each other. So I'm glad that they're being so strict, but we are being very loose. During the last 3 months, we have been able to come and go as we please.
We continue in Quarantine Quickies by reporting a Florida scientist was fired for refusing to manipulate COVID-19 data. We've prepared a package on this. Watch this.
New questions about how Trump's allies may be shielding coronavirus data from the public as a kind of a disinformation campaign while dealing with the reopening debates. In Florida, the virus data chief was actually removed from the job after being told, reportedly, to censor information. That individual, Rebecca Jones, says she was ordered to censor some data, quote, but refused to manually change it to drum up support for the plan to reopen. On her last day, she also sent an email to the office warning, quote, as a word of caution, I wouldn't expect the new team to continue the same level of accessibility and transparency that I made central to the process during the first 2 months. Adding my commitment to it, largely, arguably, entirely, is the reason I'm no longer managing it. Translation, she's saying she was fired for being accurate.
According to the scientist who created Florida's COVID-19 data portal, wasn't just removed from her position on May 5, she was fired on Monday by the Department of Health for refusing to manipulate the data.
Rebecca Jones said that she single-handedly created 2 applications in 2 languages, 4 dashboards, 6 unique maps with layers of data functionality for 32 variables and million lines of data. Her objective was to create a way for Floridians and researchers to see what the COVID-19 situation was in real time. She was asked to modify the ability to change the data that would more positively support Florida and Governor Ron DeSantis' reopening plan.
When she refused to participate, she was dismissed. Jones said, I worked on it alone, 16 hours a day for 2 months, most of which I was never paid for. And now this has happened, I'll probably never get paid for. Confirming that she has not just been reassigned on May 5th, but fired from her job as Geographic Information Systems Manager for the Florida Department of Health.
This story is very distressing to me because we have a very large LGBT population in Florida, especially in South Florida being one of the largest in the country. And this is smoke that is developing to say we're manipulating data to open communities and justify opening communities. There's smoke here.
And the fact that she would be fired for not manipulating the data just tells you how many other people might not have been fired and are still being forced to change what we're hearing just to benefit those that are in power, which is even more unfortunate and quite honestly very fearful.
I'm glad she stood her moral ground. I'm sorry she was fired.
We queue up our segment called Coronavirus Good News. After we finish our quarantine quickies, we like to lighten it up. We've reported all of the statistics and facts for the day, but now we want to report the things that made us smile today in Coronavirus Good News. Coronavirus Good News. Chef Kobe is the 1-year-old who is lighting the world on fire. The Food Network better get ready because there's a new celebrity chef on the scene, and he can't even talk yet. Kobe, a 1-year-old food lover and culinary star known to his fans as Chef Kobe, has quickly become a very popular presence on social media thanks to his adorable and practical cooking videos.
The hands-on chef, who seems to enjoy playing with his food as much as he does eating it, prepares everything from classic comfort foods like macaroni and cheese and pizza to decidedly more complex dishes including lamb chops and Thai beef bowls with basil.
With a little help from his parents, wink wink, Kobe has quickly amassed a following of 1 million people on Instagram within the last few months. To put that in perspective, Chef Jose Andres, whose restaurants have been awarded prestigious Michelin stars, has just 514,000 followers. Guy Fieri has 1.4 million followers. The discovery of Chef Kobe's talent was only because of the social isolation of his parents. And that makes this Q News Tonight's Coronavirus Good News. Watch this.
Tonight we bring you a mini sample of Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBTQ community. Every Thursday night on Q News Tonight at 7 p.m., we have experts to answer your questions that need to be answered. We invite you to join our special Facebook group to ask all your questions.
Tonight, we give you some examples of questions viewers are asking, and on Thursday, we have a medical professional here to help with the answers.
Our question tonight in Q's Q&A, Coronavirus and the LGBT Community, ask from a viewer, is there an item in your life that has become essential to you that wasn't prior to the quarantine?
A thermometer. Quickly, every single day. We have one of those like check your forehead ones that's like a laser gun. Every single day when I wake up, I use that. Also my bike, because I've been biking everywhere lately.
Not necessarily an item, but I've never in my life ordered groceries before delivered to my house. And I order things on Amazon like makeup that I've usually just picked up in stores. I think the internet has become vital. But if I were having to pick a specific item in my house, the stove.
That's interesting.
I've cooked a lot.
For me, an essential item in my home is the television remote control and putting it down. I have realized early in the quarantine that I was watching way too much television that I didn't watch before, and I realized it's almost worthless. So I'm trying to put the remote control down and do other more valuable things. Tonight, we'd like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this living museum possible.
Tonight, we are broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
Tonight, we bring you Q headlines. The LGBTQ community in America is diverse. The LGBTQ community around the world is vast. And tonight we bring you a bullet point of Q News headlines for today, Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. Q headlines. LGBTQ and the 2020 census. You need to fill it out. What might not be so well known about the census is that it disproportionately helps the LGBTQ community. Things like Medicaid, food stamps, as well as public housing and LGBTQ youth homeless prevention programs are directly funded based on the census statistics. It is vitally important that we as a community participate.
And it also helps a lot of other minority groups. I know in South Florida and Miami specifically, there are huge movements to get Latinos to register, even if they are considered illegal, just because that helps in terms of the overall census. It helps in how the state is run, quite frankly, and it's important to make sure that you have a voice in that state.
This is very, very vital. Working in social services is my day job, and when we go to apply for help or funding or grants, they look at those data. And when we're asking for money for the LGBTQ community or senior population or any target population, if you didn't report yourself on the census, they say we don't need it.
Yeah.
Generally, we're reflected as 7% of the population. The census will be very powerful for how we're reflected over the next 10 years.
Q headlines. The beat goes on for Pride with Out Loud digital concert series. With Prides in person being canceled due to COVID, award-winning LA-based event producers JJLA announced that the Pride artist showcased Out Loud has been reimagined as a 10-part digital concert series titled Out Loud, Raising Voices. The series will appear exclusively on Facebook with a premiere on May 26th.
I think this is super beautiful. I know that it will never be like a real Pride where we can get together and fellowship with like-minded individuals, gay, straight, allies, bi, trans, etc. But we are all in this together, and if we can do it in the virtual world, at least we still get to do it.
5 prides in South Florida just recently had a digital pride. For all of them combined, I congratulate Out Loud for making this decision, and we support it in terms of the May 26th broadcast and the series that they're going to do. But it makes me sad that we're on the verge of Pride Month, and there's going to be no prides in the United States.
Yeah.
The 51st anniversary of Stonewall is going to be quiet.
I'm actually really excited for this. I can imagine that a lot of people that might not be comfortable with being a part of the LGBTQ community or that aren't out yet might get to participate this year after months of considering who they are and being stuck inside and then realizing, no, I want more from life, I want to live honestly, and joining this. Plus, all the other ones are already so naked. I imagine this one, it's just going to be full-on nudity.
Wow. I don't know if it'll be naked people, but I will say, piggybacking on your statement, people that are not out of the closet and are too shy and afraid to go in public to an actual pride, this might be their way to sneak out and experiment. Yeah. Next up is Q headlines. IKEA begins campaign against homophobia and transphobia and biphobia. IKEA launched their new campaign, #BeSomeone'sHome, which asks families to be accepting of all genders and identities and making them feel right at home.
Well, it requires the Swedes, apparently, to demonstrate in America that you should be unconditionally accepting. I welcome IKEA's move.
If they have those meatballs everywhere, I think it is home for everyone. I have not met a person that does not love them, so it doesn't matter who you are, come together over the Swedish meatballs and have a good time.
I think this is a beautiful story, but I'm sad that it has to be national news, that a major corporation backs our community.
In Q headlines, the director of God's Own Country demands Amazon boycott after gay sex acts are censored. They're censored. Francis Lee took to Twitter to ask people in the USA to not purchase on Amazon until the reasons for this censorship could be investigated, promising to report back later. Amazon, for their part, stressed they themselves had no part in the editing, but rather the distributor made the cuts.
Well, this definitely makes me curious to see what's in it and what got banned. So maybe this was all an entire marketing ploy that I would never have heard of the show otherwise, and now I am waiting on the edge of my seat to see it, because it has to be really raunchy to get banned, at least in my head.
You're like my husband. He doesn't want to watch anything unless it has a mature rating. Yeah, I'm just like Napoleon. I want to see the director's edit now.
Communicate with Amazon and say if your statement is true, demand that the distributor return the show to its original content format.
Cue headlines. Hungary just voted to erase recognition for trans people. Hungarian citizens can no longer change the names on their birth certificates. The bill was put forward on March 31st, International Trans Day of Visibility. The bill was put forward just hours after the House and Parliament were distracted by agreeing to allow the Prime Minister to rule indefinitely due to COVID-19.
This, of course, is very sad news to me and the rest of my community and all of our community, actually. What impacts one of us impacts all of us, and this is truly sad. The only thing I can say is hang in there. It will get better, and move somewhere else. A lot of my clients are from other countries, and I've helped them change their name in America, even if they can't change their name back home.
What in the hell is going on in Hungary? We keep reporting this and distressing for the entire LGBT community in America, because this is a misdirection move from COVID to allow taking away rights. Could happen here. We end tonight's broadcast of The Big Finish. Short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective. So here we go. First on Q News tonight, The Big Finish. First story. In 2015, a 66-year-old Nebraska woman sued all homosexuals.
I can only imagine that that must be a very fun thing to be, is being, not just in 2015, but being sued for your sexuality. I wonder if it goes in the reverse way, where you can sue all heterosexuals, particularly those in office, to see what comes about for you.
This woman is an absolute joke. Being born in I want to punch this. She's a joke, is what I want to say, and being born LGBTQ is not a choice. It's genetic. I can't breathe. I'm so fuming with this lady. she's using God. She's quoting the Bible in her story, which is handwritten, by the way. She's quoting God, and she's saying, blah, 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 gay people, this and that and the other. Being LGBT is genetic, is my point. And if God wanted us to be sinners, why would he give us something that we could not help? I totally disagree with her. And if she is serious and suing every homosexual, I'm not a lesbian, but I will testify if she includes trans people. I will go and testify on stand against her.
Calm down. You're wagging your finger and your tongue, and you've got the vapors.
She just wants that gay dollar.
Every homo in the world?
I personally am grateful that the enemies of our community are still in the turn of the 19th century. What with handwriting her complaint, her legal complaint and all. We celebrate a news story in the Big Finish. The Trump's press secretary says any other president, the media would take him at his word.
Trump is fortunate not to be taken for his word. He established this before he was even elected when he asserted he could sexually assault anyone and threatened to shoot pedestrians. Him not being taken at face value is the only thing that has kept him in the office.
She's probably right. I think Americans would have trusted any other president in history. But girl, come on. Just because you say something 20 times, it doesn't mean it's true. If I were to tell you the clouds are made out of cotton candy, how many times will I have to say that before you stop listening?
20 times?
I'm just saying.
Let's add a few zeros.
1,000.
Fact check says Trump has lied or exaggerated since he was president over 20,000 times. No president before him has ever even come close. That's why no one trusts him. In the Big Finish, Lady Gaga releases new Stupid Love video with Drag Race stars Aquaria and Alaska.
At least she goes for the successful ones. I'm tired of seeing my least favorite contestants from each season being paraded around on other platforms. That said, it's not all that new to use RuPaul girls. It would be more interesting to see Gaga in one of their videos than this reverse way.
That would be interesting, and I would love that. You know, my favorite Alaska Thunderfuck is my favorite RuPaul alumni out of every queen.
Can we say fuck? Thunderfuck?
That I did.
Thunderfuck.
Yeah. I did say it. I think we're on cable, right? Yeah. We can do that. And I think that she is Lady Gaga's favorite as well. So if we were to see Gaga in a video, it would probably be Alaska's. I just want to be loved. This is brilliant. I will say, though, that it's more of a makeup commercial, but go girl, get your coins.
In terms of support of the LGBTQ community, I think it is very clear Lady Gaga is this generation's Cher. And we're going to talk about Cher in a moment. In the Big Finish, Ruby Rose calls it quits as Batwoman after one season.
As far as I know, this was the first lesbian lead on superhero primetime. Granted, I didn't watch it, so maybe that's the reason that she's calling it quits. But maybe this does make sense. Maybe they're just making way for Batman, or even better, Robin.
LGBTQ questioning girls across the world, I'm sure, are devastated. And you know, I wonder, I think this might, I have no idea, but I would wonder to see if it's a diva move. Maybe she asked for more money and they shot her down, thinking she had more clout that she doesn't have. I just hope that they recast and move on.
I suppose being Batwoman wasn't all roses after all. The Big Finish. Creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer says Willow would have been bisexual, not gay, if it was aired today.
Willow was bisexual. You could say that she found her way to lesbianism, I guess, but I always thought she was bisexual. This sounds like a great story to go over in the reboot. When is that story coming? When is the next Slayer happening, Josh? Joss, we've been hearing about this for a very long time, and I'm waiting for my Buffy reboot.
You know, I think that would be an accurate story for today's political climate. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I mean, this does seem backwards, doesn't it? I remember in the 90s, most of us came out as bi before we came out as lesbian or gay. Right? You should come out bisexual first, then gay?
Leave it to the straight guy to tell someone it's easier to be gay than bisexual. Exactly. I love your work, Josh, but come on. Here we go. Big Finish. Happy 74th birthday to Cher.
Babe.
I got you, babe.
Bang, bang.
He shot me down.
Bang, bang.
I hit the ground.
Bang, bang.
My baby shot me down.
This is the song
For the lonely, can you hear me tonight?
This is a woman's world.
Tell the truth.
Half-breed.
That's all I ever heard. Half-breed.
'Cause I'm
Strong enough to live without you. Wait, hold on. Here's another one. I was born in the wagon of a traveling show.
my mama used to throw for the money they throwed.
Gypsies,
Tramps, and thieves.
If I could turn back time.
If I could find a way.
You believe in life after love.
After love, after love.
I need time to move on.
I need a love that feels strong.
Oh, come on. You're not going to sing with us? It's fun.
We almost got into it. Almost got into it.
You know, I was in the front row of her first real final performance broadcast that was broadcast on HBO. I was in the front row, sitting right in front of her in her second kind of real final performance that was broadcast on NBC. After those historic moments, I'm having trouble remembering, after listening to these two, why I loved Cher in the first place.
Wow.
Well, that's it for today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it's important to Q News Tonight. But you must help us. Click subscribe on YouTube and share this news.
We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. This is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the world, and your community needs your support.
You are not alone. We will get through this crisis.
We are here with you, and this is Q News Tonight.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of Misty Eyes and Napoleon Plays, we'll see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night.